But anyway, it's done now, so...
Well, there's nothing you can do about it,
No.
yet.
They seemed like Britain's most down-to-earth family, a love story written in mud, laughter, and Yorkshire hills. Yet behind the cameras, cracks were forming. The long days grew heavier and lonelier. The success bred resentment, and the bond that once defined them was shattered. After 22 years of marriage, Clive and Amanda's story ended in heartbreak. And the truth behind their split is far darker than anyone imagined. The Owen family. Amanda and Clive Owen of our Yorkshire Farm were the family everyone rooted for. But while they looked like the perfectly grounded family on television, behind the scenes, not everything was as perfect and smooth sailing as they made it look. Amanda Owen was just 21 when she first crossed paths with Clive Owen, a meeting that would completely change her life forever. At the time, she was still finding her footing as a trainee shepherdess. She was young, curious, and drawn to the rugged beauty of Yorkshire. But when she visited Ravenseat Farm, a remote patch of land tucked deep into the rolling hills of Swaledale, to borrow a male sheep, she met Clive, who was a 42-year-old farmer at the time. Clive had already been married once and had 2 children from that earlier relationship. He reportedly wasn't even looking for romance. Yet something about Amanda's energy and curiosity intrigued him. She was fascinated by the land, by the lifestyle, and by the dignity of working in nature. Their connection was instant, and while their age gap might have raised eyebrows, they both didn't care. Speaking about how they met in an interview, Clive said, "I do remember this 6-foot-something woman knocked on the door. I was very taken with her. You couldn't not be. I eventually persuaded her to give me her telephone number, and off we went from there." They bonded over feeding the animals, braving harsh winters, fixing fences, and talking about sheep breeding long after dark. Within a few years, their lives became intertwined, and in the year 2000, they tied the knot. They went on to have 9 children: Raven, Reuben, Miles, Edith, Violet, Sydney, Annis, Clemmy, and Nancy. Each of them growing up surrounded by open skies, sheepdogs, and the endless demands of life on a farm. Amanda often described their parenting approach as practical, not sentimental. The children were taught independence super early. The older ones took care of the younger ones, and everyone had a role to play. Most of the Owen children were homeschooled on the farm, while a few of the older ones attended traditional schools in the area. The family's first big break came when Amanda began sharing snippets of their daily life through writing. She began blogging and sharing the joys and challenges of raising a large family in one of Britain's most remote areas. Her honest, down-to-earth voice quickly drew a following, which social media amplified, turning her into a rural celebrity. And as more people became fascinated by the Owen family, television producers took notice. Before long, cameras showed up at Ravenseat Farm to film their daily lives. But while viewers loved every bit of it, the reality behind that easygoing life wasn't always what it seemed. The rise of Our Yorkshire Farm. When Our Yorkshire Farm premiered in 2018, no one expected it to become a national favorite. It was a simple show, with no fancy production or excessive drama. But that simplicity turned out to be exactly what made people fall in love with it. The series debuted on Channel 5 and was produced by Renegade Pictures. It followed the Owen family as they went about their everyday routines on their remote 2,000-acre hill farm in Swaledale, capturing everyday life in a way that instantly felt real and genuine to viewers. Clive was loved for his steadiness, and Amanda for juggling motherhood with her role as a shepherdess. The children were not left out. They quickly became stars in their own right and could be seen driving tractors, fixing fences, and climbing hills before most city kids would have even left their beds. Audiences loved seeing this independence, and by its second season, Our Yorkshire Farm had become a national favorite. At its peak, the series was reportedly pulling in around 3.5 million viewers per episode, becoming one of Channel 5's most watched programs. As Amanda's personality began to shine on screen, her influence spread far beyond television. Fans wanted to know more about her life, her parenting, and her thoughts on the world, and so she became known as the Yorkshire Shepherdess, a title she fully embraced. Her books, The Yorkshire Shepherdess, and later Celebrating the Seasons, gave readers a deeper look into the family's day-to-day life. They became bestsellers, offering the same authenticity that had made the show so popular. Around the same time, her social media presence took off, attracting more than 500,000 followers who loved her photos of farm life, the children, and the ever-changing Yorkshire landscape. As her audience grew, so did the opportunities, and soon the Owens were appearing on talk shows, radio programs, and live events, becoming one of Britain's most recognizable families. But with all the attention came new pressures, not just for Amanda, but for the entire family. Suddenly, the Owens' private world wasn't so private anymore. Cameras were always around, and every moment, whether joyful or stressful, became part of a story that millions would watch. And while viewers saw the laughter, the teamwork, and the unshakable love of a family living close to the land, not everything made it onto the screen. Behind the show's success, small cracks had already started to appear, and these cracks would slowly uncover the darker side of fame and the pressure that comes when real life and television start to overlap. The dark side of Our Yorkshire Farm. One of the first controversies surrounding the show began when Amanda mentioned that her children sometimes ate the lambs they had helped raise. To her, it was simply part of farm life, a way to teach them about the cycle of nature and where food really comes from. But online, that honesty quickly stirred a mix of strong reactions. Some viewers supported her, saying she was raising her children with respect for nature and realism, while others, especially those disconnected from rural life, found it upsetting. Suddenly, Amanda's practical approach to parenting became a trending topic. However, she explained that life on a working farm leaves no room for pretending. Children grow up seeing the realities of life and death, and she believed that understanding both was an important part of learning where food truly comes from. This same straightforward approach showed in how she raised and educated her children, which also sparked debate among viewers. The show often featured the kids helping with livestock, repairing equipment, and running freely across the fields, a glimpse of independence and responsibility that many people admired. However, some viewers questioned whether life on the farm left enough room for formal education or social experiences outside their rural world. Amanda addressed the criticism calmly, saying her children were learning lessons far beyond the classroom, skills like self-reliance, teamwork, and a strong work ethic that everyday farm life naturally teaches. As the show expanded, the Owens took on new challenges that gave audiences an even closer look at their lives. When Channel 5 aired Our Farm Next Door, the spin-off series following Amanda and the family as they renovated a derelict property, it seemed like a natural next step. But things didn't go smoothly. The renovation was plagued with problems, including bad weather, construction delays, and endless setbacks. In one candid moment, Amanda, visibly frustrated, admitted on camera that things weren't going to plan. The stress of filming began to show on the family too, especially on their son Reuben. Viewers had already seen him grow from a boy who loved tinkering with engines into a skilled young man running his own business. When he landed his own spin-off, Reuben Owen, Life in the Dales, fans were thrilled to see him take center stage. But the behind-the-scenes reality was tough. Between running machinery, managing long filming hours, and dealing with the pressure of public attention, Reuben reportedly nearly walked away from the show altogether. But perhaps the most heartbreaking challenge the Owens faced was a severe weather event that tore through Ravenseat Farm, damaging parts of the property and halting production altogether. The damage was extensive. Roads were flooded, livestock shelters were destroyed, and production crews struggled to reach the farm. The disruption threw everything off schedule, adding to the mounting tension that came with juggling real farm work and a filming crew. These cracks that once seemed small soon became harder to ignore. What had begun as a simple documentary about a family's life in the countryside was now a major production with deadlines, contracts, and public expectations. And by the time the later seasons aired, it was clear that the show's tone had subtly shifted. The laughter and adventure were still there, but so were the signs of strain. Viewers began to pick up on the tension, the exhaustion on Amanda's face, the quieter moments from Clive, and the growing independence of the children, who were starting to carve their own paths. Behind these cracks were real struggles that couldn't be edited or hidden behind a smile. And these challenges would eventually test the Owens in ways that no storm or camera crew ever could. Shadows behind the fame. In one episode of Our Farm Next Door, Amanda broke down in tears, admitting she was completely drained from juggling parenting, farm work, and public attention. The show had made her one of Britain's most recognizable rural figures, but that recognition came with expectations that she could never fully escape. People expected the smiling, capable Yorkshire shepherdess who could handle anything from 9 kids to harsh winters and fame, all without missing a beat. However, off-camera, she wasn't always that strong. The endless filming schedules, the social media pressure, and the constant scrutiny from tabloids took their toll. Even Amanda herself admitted that the persona of the perfect shepherdess had become difficult to live up to. She was still the same woman who loved her land and her family, but the media attention turned her into a brand, a public figure, and a role model. And with that came judgment. Every choice she made, every post she shared, was picked apart online. Fans adored her, but critics were never far behind. Her parenting style, her career decisions, even her personal life, all of it became topics of discussion. During interviews, Amanda began opening up about how isolating fame could be. She described feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to keep everything running smoothly, when, in reality, she often felt like she was falling apart. The pandemic made it even harder. Like everyone else, the Owens were cut off from the outside world. But for Amanda, the isolation hit differently. The constant expectation to stay upbeat for the cameras collided with the exhaustion of managing a huge family and farm under national attention. It wasn't just emotional exhaustion either. The scrutiny around her private life intensified as headlines began focusing less on the show and more on her marriage and relationships. Fans who once admired her for her honesty suddenly found themselves reading gossip columns instead of farm updates. Some sympathized, others criticized. And through it all, Amanda tried to keep the focus on her children and her work, though the strain was clearly visible. Meanwhile, Clive faced his own struggles, both physical and emotional. In 2024, he underwent major hip surgery, a tough recovery that Amanda later described as a nightmare. He was forced to slow down for the first time in decades, which hit him harder than expected. Farming doesn't pause for anyone, and being sidelined left him frustrated and restless. The surgery marked a turning point in his life that made him reflect on everything they'd built together and how much it had cost them. In one rare interview, Clive admitted he'd battled with feelings of regret and loneliness. The farm, once their shared dream, had started to feel emptier. Their children were growing up and moving on. Amanda was constantly pulled between work and media commitments, and the quiet moments they used to share became fewer and fewer. He spoke candidly about how fame had changed the rhythm of their lives, causing a drift that happens when two people are stretched in different directions. By then, the family's once private struggles were being watched by millions. Fans could sense the tension, even if it wasn't fully spelled out on screen. Amanda's emotional openness and Clive's quiet vulnerability showed that behind the sweeping drone shots of Yorkshire and the cheerful family scenes, there was a very human story playing out, full of exhaustion, heartbreak, and resilience. But among all the family stories that surrounded the Owens, one that rarely made it onto television was the tension between Clive and his eldest daughter from his first marriage, Rosie. She was just 13 when her father remarried, and had been asked to be a bridesmaid at Clive and Amanda's wedding, a gesture that should have been symbolic and sweet. But Rosie struggled to accept the sudden changes in her family. In later interviews, Rosie recalled that she cried before the ceremony, feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about her place in her father's new life. It wasn't resentment toward Amanda personally, but more the sense of being displaced and watching her family dynamic shift into something she didn't recognize. While Amanda and Clive went on to build their own large family at Ravenseat, Rosie's connection to her father gradually faded. Over the years, their relationship became increasingly strained. Rosie has described it as beyond repair, admitting that growing up, she often felt like an outsider. The farm that became so beloved by millions of viewers was, for her, a reminder of everything she wasn't part of. She rarely visited Ravenseat, choosing instead to build a separate life for herself far from the Dales. Now living in Cumbria and working as a barmaid, Rosie has kept her distance from the fame that surrounds her father's later family. She has shared that she felt excluded during her formative years, not by deliberate cruelty, but by a slow and painful disconnect that was never addressed. To her, Clive had become more of a public figure than a parent, someone she could watch on TV but not easily talk to in real life. This challenge with Rosie stands in contrast to the wholesome family image that Our Yorkshire Farm presented. While viewers saw unity and laughter on screen, Rosie's perspective hinted at a more complicated truth, where fame, distance, and emotional gaps had long been forming, even before the cameras arrived. Though Rosie doesn't publicly criticize her father or Amanda, her decision to avoid the farm entirely speaks volumes. It's a wound that seems to have lingered for years, shaped by choices and circumstances that neither side has fully reconciled. And as those emotional distances grew between Clive and Rosie, and eventually between Clive and Amanda, the once unshakable foundation of the Owen family began to crack. Those cracks would eventually lead to one of the most heartbreaking chapters in their story: the end of a marriage that millions had watched unfold on screen. The heartbreaking divorce. In 2022, Amanda and Clive Owen confirmed what many viewers had quietly suspected. Their 22-year marriage had come to an end. The announcement shocked fans who had spent years watching them work side by side on Our Yorkshire Farm. For audiences, they were the image of partnership and teamwork, the couple who could weather any storm together. But behind the steady rhythm of farm life and the cheerful family scenes, their relationship had been quietly unraveling for years. Amanda later spoke about how the relentless pace of filming and the growing media attention had placed enormous pressure on their marriage. What began as a shared adventure of raising their children and running the farm together had slowly become something heavier. The cameras that once captured their teamwork began to magnify their differences. She admitted that the emotional distance between them had grown through exhaustion, overwork, and the constant presence of public scrutiny. As the series became more popular, Amanda's individual fame rose quickly. Her books, interviews, and social media presence turned her into a public figure in her own right. Clive, who preferred to stay out of the spotlight, found it difficult to adjust. He later admitted that feelings of jealousy and resentment had crept in, not out of bitterness, but from the uncomfortable sense of being left behind, while the person beside him became a national name. He acknowledged that he hadn't always handled it well, that his frustration sometimes got the better of him, and that his behavior during that time hadn't helped their marriage survive. Their home life became increasingly complicated. Managing 9 children, a working farm, and a film crew while also living under public attention left little room for the quiet connection that had once bound them together. Amanda described how their marriage was never built on secrecy or dishonesty, but rather on shared effort. However, over time, that effort began to feel one-sided. They were both devoted parents and hard workers, but emotionally, they had begun living parallel lives under the same roof. By the time the separation was announced, it was clear that their relationship had reached a point where love and practicality no longer met in the middle. Amanda appeared emotional during several later filming sessions, occasionally breaking down while reflecting on how different life had become. Clive, for his part, accepted responsibility for his role in the split. He spoke openly about how hard it had been to adapt and how much he regretted the way things had unfolded. Despite the personal strain, both Amanda and Clive were determined to keep their family life stable for the children. They continued to co-parent and maintain contact, managing to separate their private difficulties from their shared responsibilities. The 9 children remained their top priority, and although none of them made public comments about the divorce, they continued appearing with both parents on various projects. Viewers could sense that, while the marriage had ended, the family bond itself hadn't been completely broken. What made their situation unusual was that their professional lives didn't end with their marriage. Not long after the split, they reunited on camera for Our Farm Next Door, the follow-up series that showed them taking on new challenges together. It was a strange full circle. 2 people who had divorced yet were still working side by side under the same brand that had both connected and divided them. The decision to keep working together surprised many fans. But for Amanda and Clive, it seemed to come down to practicality and shared purpose. They had built their lives, their careers, and their public identities around the same land. The farm wasn't just a workplace anymore. It was their history, their children's childhood home, and a part of their story that couldn't simply be left behind. Even with the cameras back at Ravenseat, things weren't the same. Their interactions carried the awareness of 2 people who had been through too much together to ever go back to how things were. There was mutual respect, occasional warmth, and moments of shared laughter, but the closeness that once defined them had softened into something more cautious and reflective. Fans watched, some with admiration and others with sadness, as the couple continued to appear together on screen, not as husband and wife, but as 2 individuals trying to navigate a new kind of relationship built on understanding rather than romance. Their divorce marked the end of one chapter, but also set the stage for what would come next. A new beginning that forced them to rebuild their lives separately, yet still under the same public gaze that had watched them for so long. Life after the divorce. After their separation, both Amanda and Clive Owen took noticeably different paths, yet their lives remained deeply intertwined through their family, their farm, and their shared place in Britain's television landscape. Neither of them disappeared from public view, but the contrast between their post-divorce lives became clear as time went on. Amanda continued to build her media presence with the same energy that had made her a household name during Our Yorkshire Farm, but this time as an independent figure working alongside her ex-husband and their children. The dynamic between Amanda and Clive on the new series drew attention because it was calm, friendly, and surprisingly functional. Viewers were curious to see how they would navigate working together after such a public breakup. And what they saw was two people who had managed to find a cooperative rhythm, united by the same love for their land and their family. Even as she continued filming, Amanda's personal life began to move in new directions. In 2024, she confirmed that she was in a relationship with businessman Rob Davies. The news made headlines quickly, especially because fans were eager to understand what life looked like for her beyond Ravenseat Farm. Rob wasn't a random stranger. He'd been working with the family for some time, helping with the digital side of things at the farm's website and online presence. Amanda and Clive both knew him from before, and Clive later said he felt Rob could be a good match for her. The relationship marked a new chapter, and though Amanda kept the details private, it was clear she was focused on finding balance and a fresh start after years defined by work, motherhood, and media attention. Speaking about the new relationship in an interview, Amanda said, "I never set out looking for another relationship." Rob Davies was a friend that Clive and I had both known for a long time. What he offered was conversation rather than confrontation, and Clive knew about it from the very beginning. He actually suggested Rob and I would be a good match. Financially and professionally, Amanda's career has remained strong. Her estimated net worth reaches around £1 million, driven by her income from television, best-selling books, and a steady stream of public appearances. Her reputation as the Yorkshire Shepherdess continues to hold influence, and she has remained one of the few personalities who could bridge traditional farming life with mainstream media. Outside of television and her books, she often speaks at events and literary festivals across the country. Amanda's voice remains authentic and approachable, and that honesty has helped her maintain the loyalty of her audience even as her personal circumstances changed. On social media, she has remained active and connected with her followers, sharing updates from the farm, family milestones, and glimpses of her day-to-day life. Her posts still carry that same mix of humor and grit that had made her relatable from the start. While some fans are nostalgic for the days of Our Yorkshire Farm, others have admired how she continues to evolve while staying true to her roots. Clive, in contrast, has taken a more private route. After the divorce, he appeared content to step away from the spotlight and return to the steadier rhythms of farm life. Although he still features on Our Farm Next Door, his role now feels more reserved. He appears when the focus is on family or practical work around the farm, often taking a back seat while Amanda and the older children take charge. His focus seems to have shifted entirely to supporting his family and helping his children pursue their own ventures in farming and related trades. Despite his reserved personality, viewers have noticed the care and pride Clive shows when speaking about his children's futures. He remains deeply involved in their work and is often seen offering advice, lending a hand, or just quietly making sure things run smoothly behind the scenes. His commitment to the farm and to ensuring that it remains part of his children's lives continues to define his days. Like Amanda, Clive has been seeing other people romantically since the divorce, though most of the details have stayed out of the public eye. He tends to keep his private life low-key, preferring to remain focused on his work and family rather than media attention or publicity. Amanda herself confirmed this while speaking about her new relationship with Rob in an interview, saying, "A few years ago now, Clive was also seeing someone else and was openly dating. It wasn't a secret. everyone around us knew, even the children. Clive also opened up about the situation, saying, "I was seeing other people too, and no one came after me with their cameras and their negative stories, calling me a homewrecker." Financially, his situation is less public than Amanda's. While his net worth isn't officially documented, it's clear that he leads a more modest lifestyle, focused on the farm rather than media appearances. The balance between his stability and Amanda's continued visibility has created a kind of unspoken harmony between them, each fulfilling their roles in ways that reflect who they are at heart. Together, they remain united where it matters most: their children, the land, and the life they've built at Ravenseat. The marriage may be over, but the story they built together still runs through every field, every lambing season, and every episode filmed under the Yorkshire sky. Do you think our Yorkshire farm played a role in the end of Amanda and Clive's marriage? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.